I feel like I am just getting started. Honestly, I started drag right before the pandemic and everything shut down. And I honestly thought that I was done once we got into it because I was like, I have not established myself, and Lord knows when we're going to start again. And then things opened up and people called me, and I was like, oh, okay, let's do this. And I still feel like a baby queen most days. I am learning something every day. I'm trying to get better every day. So I feel like I'm early in my journey.
What first brought you to doing drag?
Uh, Honestly, my competitiveness. One of my best friends on a random day, like we went to the drugstore and she put me in drag, and I was like, oh, that's fun, cute, whatever. And then one of her best friends, that's not one of my really good friends, had started drag in LA, and we all made a plan to meet up in San Diego, and we're gonna go out and drag. And so I was like, well, if they're practicing over there, I have to start practicing here. And in practicing for this one trip, I just kind of got bit by the bug and was like, okay, I guess we're gonna go all into this. And then by happenstance, got met my now drag mother who was putting on this competition, and I did the competition, and then the rest was history after that.
How did it feel doing that for the first time?
Uh, Good. I mean, anybody that gets in drag, I think always is like, oh, I am now the most beautiful person in the world. And years later, you go back and look at those pictures, and you're like, oh, I was broken down and busted. But like in the moment, you feel gorgeous, and it feels fun and different. And especially if it's your first time, it's just like something that you finally get to see yourself in a different way and see. I like to say a lot of times you get to see your potential and to see like how gorgeous you can become. So that's always fun.
hmm What did that feel like as far as seeing that potential? Tell me more about that.
I think a lot of times, especially as a bigger black queer person, it feels like you kind of slip through the cracks and you don't get a lot of attention based on your looks. I think I've always gotten praised on my personality and my charisma and all that, but it's never been like, oh, you're just the most good looking person. And I think in drag, it finally is like, oh, I told you, I've always been a very attractive person, and now I can like really lean into that. And it's always one of the first things people say is, oh, you look so good tonight, you look so gorgeous. And so it's it's fun to feel like I've unlocked that little portion of myself of being able to walk into a room and get compliments for my looks versus just getting compliments for my personality or my talent.
What were some of those feelings that you first felt in the early days? What kind of affirmations were you feeling?
Um, I felt early on that I talk a lot about my drag when people ask me like what's the difference between Philip and Peaches, and I personally don't know that there is necessarily a huge difference between the two personalities, but I do think that there is a confidence and love of body that I think I've always put on as a front, even though I've been very insecure with my body. And I think drag finally gives me permission to be like, oh no, my body looks great. It may be a fake body, but I've done a really good job of creating this fake body that I've come to love and that I think people love. And it's part of what makes Peaches so appealing is getting to be a big, sexy. I try to get nearly naked as much as I can when I'm in drag because I finally am feeling like I've done the work to create this illusion that people really are into and like.
Do you think that has changed how you view yourself overall?
Um, yeah. I mean, I think out of drag, I don't know if necessarily, I can't say for sure if it's drag or just me getting older that I've grown to just kind of settle into my body and what it is on today versus what I'm trying to aim for, what I think I should be aiming for. But I think I definitely have gotten to a point of giving 1,000% less fucks and just kind of being like, this is where I am right now and this is what I have to work with. And if people don't like it, then they can kick rocks. And that has helped me get to a point of being like, you don't have to care about it anymore. As long as you're feeling healthy and feeling like you're doing what needs to be done to maintain this lifestyle, then it's all good.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost like an amplification of your true self in some ways.
And it's so interesting in a profession, in a world where so much of it is aesthetics based, how much it can help me not care about aesthetics outside of it. And I think that's kind of part of it, is that I spend all my time in my working space and my career worrying about aesthetics, that by the time I'm done, like, I can't remember the last time I bought clothes for myself out of drag. And that's probably not a good thing, but at the same time, I just like, when I'm out of drag, I want to be in sweats and sitting around on the couch. So I am happy to feel a little bit of a load off worrying about how aesthetically pleasing I am outside of drag, because I feel fine and comfortable and confident in that now.
It seems like a lot of energy as well put into it, and I would understand being tired after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting to get into drag, it's exhausting to get out of drag, and then if you've been to a drag show of like the really great girls, it is 2 hours straight of just going and going and giving 150% and putting a toll on your body and having to engage a crowd, and it's exhausting.
It seems like it plays to your strengths as well. You know, like you seem like a very like great performer. You know, you're a funny person. Like you're telling jokes constantly, and like you can carry a whole performance that way.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that drew me to New York, and specifically drew me to drag, and specifically New York drag, is that a lot of people forget that hosting is such a big part of drag, and specifically the drag scene here. And I feel lucky that it's kind of something that came naturally to me. And like, of course, it's something I worked on and grew in, and have gotten better and still continue to try and get better at. But it's my favorite part of it. I think it's the opportunity to connect with people. It's the opportunity to just laugh and have fun. I think so much of the drag shows in New York City rely on it also feeling like a time where you're just laughing and having fun the whole time. And I think if you don't have a great host and there is this kind of lull in energy between numbers, it doesn't really matter how great you are at numbers. If you've lost the audience and they're not paying attention anymore because you were talking about whatever and it wasn't engaging, then like, what's the point? So I feel very blessed that I somehow just got the gift of gab and can just like joke with people. I love it.
When did you discover that was a strength of yours?
Oh, that very young. My mom, I was raised by my mother, by a single mother, and she just, all the time when I was young, just reminded me, oh, you got one thing from your daddy, and it is the gift of gab. You have a silver tongue, and you are very funny when you talk. And I think that is something that it's been a blessing and a curse my whole life, because, you know, when you're a kid in elementary school and you can't shut up and you want to keep making jokes and sing and be the life of the party, it's not always suitable. But I am so happy to have grown up and grown into it, and to have that be such a integral part of me that makes me the best at what I'm trying to do right now. So thank goodness for it. It may have made it a struggle growing up, but it has come into its full fruition and given me a purpose, and given that weird quirk a purpose.
How does it feel to have something that might have been seen as a negative now be something so positive?
Oh, it's so vindictive. It's just, I feel vindicated. There are so many times where I'm just like, I would love to go back to those teachers now and be like, remember when you gave me all that shit and you told me that I needed to just sit and be quiet? Well, it turns out I was fine tuning a muscle into skill. It was great. I mean, as a kid, I spent a lot of time just like kind of beating myself up about always being the loud one and always being the one that wanted to talk and couldn't focus on anything. And now that is literally what gets me ahead in my career. So like, joke's on you.
Tell me about that transition from working to going full time with the drag.
It's been great so far. I've gotten to rest my mind and my body and my soul a little bit more, um, and I am very happy, and I feel like I'm still financially stable enough that I'm not in a panic at all. The biggest thing for me was losing my health insurance, and also I just didn't quite realize how much I enjoy having a structure to my day. I don't like having the option of sleeping in until 11 because if I do, I will. And then I kind of feel like my day is gone. But for the most part, I've felt like I hit a milestone for myself. I said I've always wanted to be a performer for my career and for my life, and I feel like I have now done that. And I've not only done that, but I'm doing it in New York City, which is we can all play it off as much as we want, but that's a big deal. And I think it's just made me so, I feel fulfilled in a lot of the things that I've worked for many, many years and my whole life, honestly. So it's good, it's scary, but it's great. It's great.
Were there any moments during that process where you felt like I have to turn back, or you felt that doubt?
The day that I sent my notice email, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that was a bad idea. I shouldn't have done that at all. And then probably like for the full week after that, I was just like, as the news slowly disseminated through the company and like people were like, oh, good, get out of here, go. This is such a great thing. Then I started to settle a little bit more. And now like a few weeks away from it, I'm like, oh, thank God I did that, because like it was not bringing me any joy. It wasn't bringing me any kind of, I wasn't learning anything there anymore. I wasn't doing anything that was making me better, and that was soul sucking. And I absolutely hated the idea that I was working tirelessly for white people nonstop. I just like, there's just something in my bones that just felt so wrong to be like slaving tirelessly to make sure that old white people were getting their pockets lined, and I was not happy with that. And now I get to line my own pockets, which is great. I have no boss. I'm my boss. Period.
It's hard to beat that feeling.
Yeah, it's great. One of the things that I've always loved about drag is that I have full control of what I'm doing, of what my hours are. If I really, ultimately, I can choose not to work certain gigs. I get to decide what my music is. I get to create the whole production design, and now I get to literally do that with my entire life, and it's so nice. And like, and all of the money goes where I want the money to go. I don't have to pay anybody else for it besides the damn government, but whatever. But yeah, it's just a very good, wild feeling to not have to. I've gone on 3 trips since I quit, and that was 3 months ago, and I didn't or 3 weeks ago, and I didn't have to ask anyone for permission. I got on a plane and went, and that was like, oh, cool, love that. And the whole time I was gone, I didn't have to work. I've taken a bunch of trips since we've been in the whole work from home world, and it was so annoying to like be in LA and have to work New York hours because I still needed to be on the clock and up at 6 a.m. just making sure people's lives are running right. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to check. Deleting Outlook and Slack off of my phone was the best feeling of all of them, and never looking back.
Let's say another performer who's a little newer comes to you and says, I'm thinking about quitting my job. How did you do it? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to do it if it's what's going to make them happy. And I would say just spend at least a week, probably 2 weeks, just looking at what your finances look like and how you're generating money throughout those 2 weeks to make sure you'll be all right and be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And then other than that, it's just be happy. You have to do what's going to make your heart happy and your soul happy. And if this is what's going to do it, then do it. And at the end of the day, so many people are hiring right now. Like, if you really need to go back to your job, there will be a job to be had. But like, especially if you're going to be a performer, you've only got X amount of years that you're going to really be viable in any kind of a market. And so like, if not now, then when? It's not like you're going to be at 50 and be like, oh no, I'm feeling a little bit more stable. Let me just take a break and go put on high heels and hurt myself all week. So I say just do it.
What do you say to that voice that always comes in and says, "Oh, if you're not going to be stable, you're not going to be secure"? How do you get past that hurdle?
Um, I, ooh, I don't know that I do. I just accept that in my life things have always kind of fallen into place, and that I work hard enough that things will always work out. So I panic about it for a second, and then I say, you know what, no, let me get to the next day, let me get to the next week, and it's always all right, because I think the thing to say is to just know yourself and always be prepared, and just know that there's always a list of priorities in your life, and once you check off your priorities, then all of the elective stuff that you want to do is easily accessible, because you've taken care of all the business. That's, I think, the most important thing is you pay your rent, you pay your bills, you make sure you're eating, and then everything else that's left over is for you and for bettering yourself and bettering your career. Any extra money that I have right now is going to buying more drag. It is going to making sure that I've got these production things going on, and so I just make sure that all the priorities are checked, and then you can do everything that you want. Take care of the needs, then you get your wants. That's the biggest thing.
I like what you said too about trusting yourself, trusting that you'll be able to figure it out. Because that's I feel like really helps. Just give you the confidence to be like, I don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went to school for musical theater. So here we are, what, almost 12 years later, and I did the musical theater thing for a while. It didn't look exactly how I wanted it to, so I stopped and went back to the corporate world. That didn't look how I thought it was going to, so now I'm a drag queen. So I just like, I'm a firm believer that the universe, as long as you are working and moving towards things, will always kind of steer you in the right direction and make sure that you land exactly where you're supposed to be. So I just have learned to trust that things will always work out as long as I'm continuing to do the good and do the work that I should, because I have everything in my life has kind of seemingly come out of nowhere, and then I look at it and I'm like, well, no, these are things that I was kind of working towards or working adjacent to, and they happen to collide in exactly the right way. So I think it's just a lot of knowing that it will be all right. My friends and I say that all the time. It's gonna be all right. You may not know exactly what it's gonna look like, but it's gonna be okay.
It's very inspiring.
That's good, because sometimes I'm panicked and I say it and I'm like, is this true? But no, I mean, every single time that I've been like on the verge of like, I don't know what's next, or I don't know if I'm even gonna make it to next month, and then something happens for me, and it's been like that for literally all of my friends. And I think that is an important aspect to it as well, is that I've surrounded myself with people that also work in that same kind of train of thought of just like, do the work. Whether, I think there's so much emphasis put on endgaming and like creating these goals, and like, oh, what's your 5-week goal? What's your 5-month goal? What's your 5-year goal? And I'm like, those are all great, and I think you should be goal setting, but I think you have to just be open and available to whatever happens on your way to those goals. Because if you are so fixated on trying to get to this one thing that you start closing doors and opportunities that happen along the way, then you're not going to be happy, and you're going to end up possibly not even getting to that goal. And I think that in talking to my friends, we've all kind of done that, where we're working really hard towards specific things, and then the second that opportunity opens up, you go for it and you take it, and maybe it's a detour to get you to that original goal, or maybe it's this new branch that's going to take you to a goal that you didn't even know about. And that's kind of the coolest thing of life, I think I've found as I've gotten older, is like I have no idea really what 5 years looks like for me. I know what I want it to look like, but it may or may not look like that, and that's perfectly fine.
It's crazy how things, when you just put yourself out there, things just start appearing.
Very much so. And I think that's also like people tend to be nervous and scared to like ask for what they want or to like present themselves in a way that's different than or contrary to what they've been doing forever. And so that's, I think, a great piece of advice is to just always never be scared to ask for what you want. Never be scared to ask for more than what you think you deserve based on what people tell you. Just be there and be present and be your best self, and things will always open up for you. It's at least what I've learned.
What does success mean to you?
Oh, oh, I don't know anymore. I mean, right now, drag for me, in drag for me is one, being financially stable, and two, just working and people calling me and asking me to do things. I feel successful in drag because I do have X amount of weekly shows. I do this as my living now. It is my career. So I think there's that success is what you make of it saying, which I think is kind of bullshit, because I think we all kind of understand what success is, but success can be different things for different people. Because I don't know that I am fully successful in. No, I take that back. I am a successful drag queen. I think it's when we talk. I talked about like goal setting and everything, and I think when you start to achieve goals and you achieve dreams that you've had, and you achieve success, it's then adjusting and figuring out, okay, now that I have this, what does my new definition of success, what is my new dream, what is my new goal? I think it's just constantly evolving and constantly adjusting, especially if you're good at what you do and you are achieving these successes and you are achieving your dreams, then what do you do? I think success is an ever-evolving thing, depending on what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, it reminded me, you said earlier, you're kind of revamping your routine, like your jokes, and rethinking. It's like this continuous development.
Yeah, I think if you're good at anything, it should be constantly evolving. I think culture changes, fashion changes, humor changes, people change inside their relationships. There's so much change that is always happening that it's not doing anybody a service to kind of put yourself into this strict box of things when it's really this amoebus thing that is growing and shifting and changing. I think that is one of the most important things that I've learned, is that like change is not. I am definitely a person that's like, change is the worst thing in the world. I hate it. Like, I hate changing things. But at the end of the day, like, change is inevitable, and you have to kind of learn to embrace it and how to get on board with change, and then you can grow with it, and it ends up being a good thing a lot of the times, and it ends up being things that will help you grow and change and become a better version of yourself. So I think in our successes and in our work and our goal setting, it's always being available to those changes. It's what I said before, if you're working towards a goal and an opportunity shows up, you have to learn to change and adjust your goal, or else you might just go past something that could have been the best thing that ever happened in your life, you know? So.
How do you keep that open mindset as someone who doesn't always feel great about change?
I have learned to trust the process a lot. I just have to keep having these conversations with myself where I'm like, yes, it may not be what you want, but it is what's happening, and it's likely going to open up other doors. I when I first started drag, I was like, oh, if I'm gonna be a successful drag queen, I need weekend shows. And now all of my shows are weekend shows, and now I get to hang out and sew and get my taxes done and do all of that Monday through Thursday. I don't even work on Thursday anymore. I work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I have 4 days off a week, and I am still maintaining the same exact lifestyle that I did when I was working a full-time job at a corporation and doing this. And that, for me, is just like, that kind of change could have sent me into a complete head spiral. And instead, I quit my job and have been thriving. So it's just trusting and knowing that, like, change is terrifying sometimes and could look like you losing a bunch of work and a bunch of gigs, but change could also mean you're just cleaning out things that didn't necessarily need to be there. Were they great to have and did I love them? Yes, those were all shows that I absolutely loved, and I was working with some of my favorite people in the city. But now I have this opportunity to go and see those people outside of drag. I can work on our relationships. I can work on me as a person, and that is it's taking the change and trying to always silver lining it and trying to always shine a light that is good on it, because there's enough darkness and enough bullshit in the world to keep it. We gotta make our own light sometimes.
It's very inspirational hearing you talk about this. It feels like you can feel the excitement and like the change,
Yeah.
that's happened.
Yeah. I definitely feel lighter and lifted lately, because I am doing what I love, and I don't have to worry about anything but myself, and that's good. And I think I'm, especially as someone that has like dealt with mental health issues their whole entire life and dealing with medication and like trying to figure out what that looks like, to finally be in a place where I haven't taken any prescribed medication since I was 19. I was taking medicine for depression and anxiety and ADHD and like all these things. Stopped all that when I was 19, and then kind of just leaned heavily into smoking weed all the time as my medication. And about 3 years ago, like right around when I started drag, I stopped smoking weed. And to be 32, but to be 32 and to finally be in a place where I don't feel like I necessarily have to use outside substances to kind of find my joy and to balance my chemicals. Not to say I don't have days where like, yeah, it's sad and it's rainy and I don't feel like getting out of bed. Like, yeah, we all have those days, but to feel like right now, like it's not crippling me is such a relief and such a joy. Because I mean, when I started drag, like 2018 was probably rock bottom for me. And then I started drag like the end of that year and into the next year. And I like have changed my life, and like I've just, something clicked and I motivated myself and quit my survival job and found this job and quit doing this and started doing that. And like, it's been really kind of miraculous, to the point that especially because it's happened over like 3 years, that I haven't even really like clocked it. But like I have pulled myself up out of probably the worst depression I've ever had, and am kind of at the peak right now. I'm very happy and feeling very fulfilled. And I think a lot of it is because I finally am doing something that I love, and I have full control and autonomy over my life and my world, and that feels so good. I think a lot of people work for that for a long time, and now I'm doing it.